All right, I want to welcome everyone to today's Lunch with Haley webinar. It is my pleasure to introduce you to those who have not yet met Katie and Bradley. Katie is our Director of Recruitment Marketing for our Haley Marketing brand and for our Polaris Recruitment Communications division. And Bradley is a Senior Recruitment Marketing Specialist who's been with us a long time, helping staffing companies with all of their job spend management and other recruitment marketing. So, guys, before we jump into the slides, I'm actually going to repeat something I just said before we went live. And that's we haven't had a lot of discussion about recruitment marketing. And I sort of joke that, nobody's cared about it but since 2023, and that's not quite true, but it certainly hasn't been a priority. Um, just before we get into first slide one about how to sell, I'd love to hear from both of you just a very quick what are you seeing as the trends? Is it becoming a bigger issue again? Is it staying about the same? Has it changed from, just cost per applicant to all focused on quality, or is it all just AI talk? What are you guys seeing?
I would say a combination of all, but there is a lot of AI talk. And because of that, with AI resumes, the quality is becoming a little bit more of a concern. And are these authentic resumes? So we've definitely heard a lot of that, but clients are still concerned about their cost per application. So we hear a lot of that too. So I would say all of it that you mentioned, to be honest with you.
Awesome. Bradley, how about you? Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I would just say, you're right, David. Over the past couple of years, recruitment marketing hasn't been as prominent in the staffing and recruiting industry, but as things have been improving, and growing, it's definitely becoming obviously a lot more important these days. And what I'm seeing is our companies are starting to have a lot more intentionality with their strategy and their spend. So, in the past, people would have a budget and they're not really sure why. Today, they're actually looking at the costs of everything and the revenue that their marketing is bringing in, and it's leading to some really good results if you do follow that formula.
Fantastic. Actually, you could not have had a better segue if we tried. So I'm going to shut up, turn my camera off, and let you guys take it away. So, guys, have fun. Talk to us about recruitment marketing in 2026.
Yeah, so I'll start us off, David, with the next slide, just kind of talking about today's reality, and really, I'm sure as a lot of people know already, hiring is just as difficult as it's ever been. While there are almost 7 million job openings in the United States, that definitely shows that there's opportunity for hiring, for staffing and recruiting. There are jobs to be filled, but with that being said, unemployment rate is still considerably low. It is a little bit higher than it has been since, 2021 and post-pandemic area, but it's still considerably lower than it was in the early 2010s, from 2010 to 2016. Two additional challenges that play into hiring are the top 10 candidates are usually, or excuse me, the top candidates are usually off the market within 10 days. So speed and finding that grade A level talent. So 70% of candidates are passive candidates, probably because they are some of that grade A talent. They already have jobs. They already are being employed. So these two stats really emphasize that while speed is a huge factor and advantage, you still need to have a competitive value proposition for your candidates. Um, if you don't even, it doesn't matter if you follow up with someone within seconds and can interview them right then and there. If your overall job that you're offering is undesirable, it's not really going to matter at the end of the day. And passive job seekers don't necessarily have the time or the energy to actively look on job boards for jobs all the time. So you really need to start thinking about where these ideal candidates are spending their free time while they're at work and while they're not at work. Um, and to kind of sum it up, the firms that are winning talent in 2026 aren't necessarily spending more, they're recruiting smarter.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about understanding recruitment marketing. So the definition from Wikipedia is that recruitment marketing is the strategies and tactics an organization uses to find, attract, engage, and nurture talent before they apply for a job. So simply put, recruitment marketing is everything that goes into getting a job candidate to click that apply button. You think about a candidate that's looking for a warehouse position. Maybe they see one of your Facebook posts. And then a few days later, they Google your company, they read reviews, they visit your career site, and then a couple of jobs later, they leave without applying. And then a week later, they see another ad, and then they come back to your website and they finally apply. So every one of those touch points from that first social media post that they saw to that final click of the apply button is considered recruitment marketing. So let's talk about some of the old school tactics. It used to be very straightforward. Candidates weren't consumed with hundreds of job opportunities online to sort through. Most people found jobs through word of mouth. Some would see a sign in the window, or they would simply just even enter a business and ask for an application. They'd even look at the classified ads that came in a Sunday newspaper, which I remember back when I first started recruitment advertising, that's all we did was classified advertising. And then the challenge back then, though, was more about the reach. Did someone see your sign? Did they read that newspaper ad? If they didn't, then they didn't know that that opportunity actually existed. The next slide, if there you go. In the 90s, technology actually completely changed the way candidates search for jobs. We had the introduction of Monster and Career Builder as our first job boards. Those started back in 1994. And then in the early 2000s, the first job aggregators were launched with Indeed and ZipRecruiter. And this completely kind of changed the way job advertising was for online. It turned into more of a pay per click search model, moving away from what Monster and Career Builder had started with, individual 30-day job posting slots. And then along came in the later 2000s, social job advertising on Facebook and LinkedIn. And believe it or not, Facebook does have a section that you can post jobs to. It's not strictly just social content that's put on your page. There's actually a part on Facebook where you can post jobs. They had it for a few years, they removed it, but it came back in 2025. And then the next slide, Bradley.
Yeah, so before we jump in, just to reemphasize, to win the war for talent, you need to start thinking smarter. You can't rely on what worked 5 years ago or what even worked 2 years ago. Recruitment marketing is a fluid industry and strategy, and employers need to stay on top of trends and be able to adapt. So in order to effectively market your company and the jobs that you're trying to fill, one of the first things you need to do is start thinking about what candidates actually want from their profession. This is something that they're doing a majority of their time. So obviously a lot of these bullet points are very important to them. Ever since, the COVID pandemic in 2020, for certain job roles and certain disciplines, work from home or a hybrid model is almost a standard expectation. People prove that they don't need to be in an office to be a good worker. So something that people are constantly looking for these days. Career growth. We as humans are goal-driven creatures. We're always trying to improve and obtain that next level, that next, improvement. If someone feels like they can't go anywhere within their current position or position they're looking at, chances are they're going to get bored and lose interest. Then there's also fast communication. Obviously, everyone's familiar with, Amazon and how you can buy something and have it delivered to your house a couple hours later. And then you throw in the use of AI language models, and the increase of automation in different industries and the staffing industries. Fast communication is just a normal thing in our lives these days. Companies that take 24 hours to reach out to a candidate who applied, chances are 10 of your other competitors have already had a touch point with them. And then if we start thinking about some of the intangibles, I like to call them, trust, culture, reputation, candidates value companies and employers that they can rely on and feel like are cared about by those actual employees. They also value a fun and enriching culture, even if that is, work from home model. That's still a very important part of what they want out of their workplace. And obviously, if you don't have a good reputation, or you can't really display some of these intangibles to people. And finally, the newest people entering the workforce, Generation Z, um, they are leaning more towards desiring meaningful work in their lives. There's a lot of things in the world that could be changed for the better. And this new generation of workers wants to take that on and tackle it. A paycheck isn't enough anymore. They want to be able to make a positive impact on their day-to-day lives. So, here we have the four pillars of recruitment marketing. Essentially, it's a holistic strategy on how to drive, attract, and retain that top talent, or that A talent. Um, Although there are numbers on here, all of these four pillars are extremely important in order to generate an effective recruitment marketing strategy. You can't just focus on one or two of these different pillars. You need to incorporate all four of them. The best companies will prioritize all of these kind of at once. For example, you can have the best career site out there, but if you have such a poor or unknown reputation, chances are people aren't even going to bother going to your career site and seeing it. And the four pillars, there really is no start or end point. They're always evolving and improving, and that's how your recruitment strategy needs to be. So before we dive in a little bit deeper into each and every one of these, as you can see, career site is kind of like your physical store. It's the main way that you can communicate, what you do to candidates and other online viewers. Recruitment advertising, or job advertising, reaching the right candidates efficiently, also known, while this can make a pretty immediate impact, it's still, the other three pillars are just as important. Social recruiting and content. So being able to engage with passive talent and nurture those relationships. Everyone is kind of on social media these days, so you and your company need to be as well. And then finally, employment brand or employer branding. You got to be able to build that trust before candidates apply. Like I said in the last slide, candidates value that trust. It's something that, with the state of the economy and everything that's going on, people like having that sense of security, and they want to be able to trust the company they're working for.
We'll go into the first pillar about your career site and the experience. So once you've attracted candidates through advertising or social media or even referrals, they almost always end up in one place, and that is your career site. It's the first real impression that candidates have of your company, so we need to make sure that it's the right one. So first, we need to ask the first question of, what does my site look like on my phone? It needs to be very mobile friendly, because most candidates are now searching for jobs using that phone device. They're doing it during work breaks, even after works, while they're on the go, at kids' sporting events. So it's very important that that site is optimized for mobile. There's so many times where a client of ours has had a great desktop career site, but when you look at it on mobile, it is all jumbled. So ensure that you're making sure that it looks good on the phone as well. Second, it needs to have a fast load speed. Speed matters, and it's very important to candidates because they have very little patience when looking for jobs. If the page takes too long to load, they're simply going to leave and they're going to look for the next opportunity. I mean, we probably all do this even as a consumer. We'll look at a product at a site, and if it doesn't move fast enough, we'll move on to the next company that has that same product. It also needs to have ease of navigation. Candidates don't want to work to find where the jobs are. If someone lands on your homepage on your website, they should be immediately know where to go to search and apply for a job. So many times we've had clients that have the career site buried at the bottom of their homepage. And that's not a place where candidates are going to look. They want to have it up in the top bar, easily shown where they need to go to look for that job opportunity. Search experience. Users expect, a good system to be able to quickly find what they're looking for. Job seekers want to be able to search multiple ways, not just by typing in a position. They want to be able to look by where is that location of that position? What is the pay? What is the industry that it's in? So multiple ways that you can search for a job. You'll generate more applications. And then most importantly, it needs to be an easy way to apply. So your site can look great, but the one factor that matters the most to candidates is how easy is it to actually apply. One thing that I do encourage everybody to do is go through an application process on your career site. See how easy it is. If you get any bottlenecks, then you know that maybe you need to revisit, what are those challenges for those candidates. Also, you need to give candidates multiple ways to apply. As you can see in the screenshot on the right side where it says apply, drop down, there's options to apply with Indeed or LinkedIn. As we said, most candidates are applying through their job. Actually, 63% of applications are now completed through mobile devices. And those mobile devices don't have resumes typically on them. So they may already have an updated profile on Indeed that includes their resume or on LinkedIn. So being able to upload that information from their phone right onto your career site to apply with just a single click is going to turn a lot more candidates into conversions. So giving candidates multiple ways to apply is important, but if they choose to apply directly on your website through your application process, it needs to be fast and simple and mobile friendly. They've already found that job and they're interested. So the last thing that you want to do is create an obstacle for them applying. They don't want to take 20 minutes to create an account to apply through your application process. They don't want to re-enter information that is already included on their resume or navigate multiple screens. The longer that process is for them to apply, then the higher the drop-off rates you're going to have. And so sometimes the best sites that we have found is the most simple and easiest application method is the best. You're just collecting the only important information to start that conversation with the candidate. And then you can always gather more information later during the interview process. So most job candidates don't come to your website directly to apply. A lot of them start their search on Google. In fact, 78% of job searches start on Google, and Google for Jobs alone sees more than 150 million searches every month. So that's why it's extremely important to make sure that your website is optimized for search engines. You need to make sure that it's easy for Google to find and understand and display. Each job, as you can see in those arrows, they each have their own unique page and they should all live on your own domain and include the right SEO and structured data. It might be a lot of information that's behind the scenes, like you can see in the one screenshot on the left, but that's the important information that Google is looking for your jobs to appear in those search engines. Candidates aren't typically just searching for your name. They're searching for things like warehouse jobs near me or administrative jobs in Buffalo. So the more optimized that you can have your job content, then the more opportunities that you're going to create for candidates to be served your site through their search engines. So getting candidates to your website is just half the battle. Once they're there, your site needs to answer some of the critical questions. And the first one is, why should someone work for you instead of another employer? So it needs to answer not just showing your jobs, but showcasing your culture, how your organization is different. What are maybe some of your health benefits that you offer? Anything that's going to make you stand out above your competition is what you need to showcase on your career site, not just your jobs alone. You also need to try to maximize conversions. So not everybody who's going to be going to your site is going to be ready to apply. We're going to talk later in another pillar about passive job seekers. And so some of them that might be coming to your site are just looking passively. So you need to create opportunities for those candidates to be able to sign up for job alerts or even join your talent community. Or even these people might not even be the ones that are actually interested. They might come there, find a job and say, oh, my friend's looking for a position just like that, and be able to share that job. So there, a lot of times you can have a share button on the job so they can email it off to a friend. And then finally, how can you bring those candidates back? Because again, not everybody is ready to apply and click that apply button right then and there. So again, through job alerts, through their email, having blogs and newsletters, any kind of remarketing campaigns that'll help you stay connected with candidates until they're ready to make that next move. And also blogs and newsletters go great back to the SEO and being able to serve up that job content on the search engines as well.
Alrighty, so getting into pillar number two, recruitment advertising, or also known as job advertising. Like I said earlier, really it's about reaching the right candidates effectively, and I like to say for the right price. Depending on how your company implements this, this can really, help improve your recruiting efforts, or it can be a real pain. Job advertising has changed a ton over the past couple of decades, but it's changed even more drastically over the last 5 to 10 years. Companies used to post their jobs everywhere with the post and pray method. They would have, one static budget and split it up evenly across whatever sources they were using. They didn't receive performance data, and if they did, they most likely weren't tracking it and using it to pivot their strategies or optimize what they were doing. And reactively hiring, they'd get a job order. Once they got it, then they would post a job and try to fill it, which generally is just takes a little bit longer. Today, when hiring is as difficult as ever, you obviously need to prioritize the right audience. Who are your ideal candidates? Where do they spend their time? Both when they're looking for jobs and when they're not looking for jobs, when they're, in their own free time. There's a lot of different tools out there that allow companies to optimize their job spend automatically by using the data they receive to guide their decisions and make intentional changes and strategic adjustments. Companies now actually track their applications and placements to see which sources are leading to the most ROI, or on the flip side, which sources aren't necessarily providing the results needed to justify that investment. And today, companies can also use their historical data, forecasting to predict their hiring needs. And this way, you can build up a pipeline of talent. This gives you the advantage of you receive an order, bam, you already have 5 qualified candidates in your pipeline ready to send to the client. There's so much data in your ATS. It's really pivotal to track as much data as you can, and then also to be willing to listen to that data and adjust what you're doing to try to make the most out of your efforts. And finally, the top companies will also let the successes of their recruiting efforts help guide their sales strategy. If you're having a lot of success recruiting for warehousing jobs in a certain market, you might want to tell your sales company or your sales department, excuse me, let's try to push this a little bit more. We're doing really well finding these candidates. If we could get more job orders, we can grow our revenue. Job advertising today, as I'm sure many people know, is hard. It's very easy to post a job, but getting that visibility is difficult. One of the main reasons is just overall saturation. Too many employers are competing for the same talent. One of my favorite metaphors is if everyone or every company is fishing in the same pond, your chances of catching the best fish or even any fish is a lot lower. So you might want to go try fishing somewhere else. There's also the issue of duplicate listings or job postings on the same site or different sites. Today, there are so many third-party websites that scrape job boards or your site in Google, and they're all just exchanging traffic in a spider web of connections, which can lead to a lot of frustration for candidates. And again, it just plays into the saturation challenge as well. Organic postings don't provide results as much as they used to. While this is nothing new to the staffing and recruiting industry, it just reemphasizes the need for an effective sponsored jobs strategy. And then finally, cost per click inflation or CPC inflation. Inflation itself, the concept is not new. Look at the prices of gas these days. It's just going up. Online advertising and job advertising is no different. It's no exemption from inflation. A $2,000 budget in 2020 is not worth the same value as a $2,000 budget in 2026. And everyone needs to kind of make that realization that online ads and job ads, they are under the same rules as inflation. Another challenge is that the candidate journey is fragmented, especially for those passive candidates, which make up 70% of job seekers. They're everywhere. They're on social media. They're using Google. They're on different company websites, and a lot of times they're on their phone. It's probably even just as common these days to have a smartphone than a desktop or a laptop. One of the biggest things that I will hear in the industry is, a company will come to me and they'll say, well, I'm not getting enough candidates or the right ones. And I'll say, well, what are you doing to try to drive or retain that talent? And they said, well, I posted the job on job board A or job board B. Well, in reality, not everyone or people don't spend all their time just monitoring that job board looking for new jobs to be posted. If one source or one site isn't working, don't keep barking up the same tree. Think about different tactics, different strategies to build up interest and get applications. I mean, today there's more options than ever between Google for Jobs, social media, referral programs, video content, pay-per-click retargeting and remarketing. There's a lot of things you can do besides just sticking to what might have worked 5 years ago. Going into what is working, tracking and listening to data. These are some major metrics that you should be tracking already. If you aren't tracking them currently, I strongly recommend you start looking at this stuff as soon as possible. If no one is paying attention to your data, your job advertising metrics, you're already at a disadvantage. You need to have someone who can let you know what it means when your conversion rate is going up or down, or if your cost per click is up 20% month over month for a certain division of your company. Why is that? And how can we adjust? Applies per job is another thing that I feel like gets overlooked. For example, you can get 100 applications in a week, but if 80 of those applies are for just one job, it's not really super beneficial. It's probably going to be more candidates than you need and not enough candidates for the other jobs. And another huge problem that I see pretty commonly is just too much of your budget or too much of a budget going to the wrong jobs or not having any specific cutoffs or limits. Again, that just really reemphasizes the need for monitoring the data and being able to evaluate it and know what to do based off what that data is saying. And finally, we get so much data for individual jobs. Really use that to your strategic advantage, being able to look at things at such a granular level. Another new thing, well, it's not too new, over the last 5 to 10 years is programmatic software and programmatic advertising. Here at Haley Marketing, we do use a programmatic software to manage our job spend management clients. It is a software called ClickCast, created by Appcast. Essentially, what it is a centralized dashboard for all of your job board efforts. If you are posting jobs on 5 different sites, you can manage all those budgets, all that data in one spot and not have to worry about combining things from 5 different places. Another benefit is that it automates the job posting process. There are probably a lot of companies out there that have hundreds of jobs that you're trying to sponsor. And manually posting those jobs to different sites takes up a lot of time that your recruiters, your internal team could be doing or using to do better things. Programmatic software also allows for dynamic bidding strategy and budget allocation changes. So if you need to make a quick adjustment or you get halfway through a month and something changes, you're able to make that adjustment quickly. You're not locked into any long-term decisions. And there's just so much data that comes within the programmatic software. You can look at results on mobile devices versus desktop devices, looking at specific job titles or job types, seeing what's performing well and what's not performing well. You can even take a look at results by recruiters and see which recruiters are having the jobs with the most success and, how are those recruiters taking those applications? What are they doing with them? And then programmatic software also gives you the ability to implement rules. So, for example, spend and application limits. This can help avoid, runaway jobs. So a job getting 500 applications, chances are you don't need 500, and you can have it automated where once that job reaches 100 applies, it gets turned off and no more spend goes to it. Same idea with spend limits. Another rule could be waterfall campaigns, which is similar to this example we have here. If a warehouse job in Cleveland is underperforming, the system can automatically shift it to a different campaign or allocate more budget towards it, especially to the sources that are actually providing either a lower cost per application or higher quality candidates. And now we will have Katie go over pillar number 3.
So, pillar number 3 is social recruiting and content. So the reality is 70% of candidates are passive talent. They're not searching job boards, but they're open to that right opportunity if it comes along. So that's why it's really important to have social recruiting and content within your media strategy mix. A word of warning though, social recruiting is not just posting jobs on social media. It's about building that awareness, trust, and relationships. Because as I just mentioned, a lot of the candidates that are on social media are passive talent. So they're not looking for just those job postings. So what is the definition of social recruiting? It's using social media to attract and nurture relationships with active and passive job seekers. Active candidates are looking for those jobs right now, where passive candidates are not. But they're still interested in your content and following your company and paying attention to really what's happening in the industry. And these candidates, a lot of times, are really good candidates because they've a lot of times been in the workforce for 10, 15, 20 years. And they are long-term employees that might not actively be on job boards. So they're interested in all that passive content that you have. And the goal for social media isn't to get every person to apply today. The goal is to stay visible and valuable. So when that person is ready, especially that passive job seeker, to make a move, they think of your company first because they saw your information. They saw about your culture, about your company. So let's dive into a little bit more about active job seekers and passive job seekers and the difference between them. Active job seekers, they're looking for that practical information. They want to see those jobs posted and what is available. They also are interested in learning more about your company, information, and they also want to read reviews. Reviews are especially important now because candidates trust other candidates. In fact, 88% of people trust online reviews as much as recommendations for family and friends. You know, before applying, candidates will check Google, read your reviews there, Indeed, Glassdoor, and social media. They want to see what people are saying about your company. And later, Bradley's going to talk about their fourth pillar, which is about employer branding. And that really has a lot to do with how your company is perceived on these reviews, is how you portray that employer branding. You know, you even got to think, you know, when you're looking for a product, I just bought a printer yesterday and I went and looked at reviews of what people said about the printer. So I was making a good selection. Candidates do the same when they're looking for a job opportunity. But passive job seekers, they're different. They're often employed. They're not actively searching social media or even job boards looking for a new job. They're looking for, you know, engaging content, looking for meaningful work. They want to know why is your place a better place to work? What's going to draw them away from where they currently are employed? So they're going to pay attention to things like your culture, how's the leadership? What values do you guys have? What is the purpose of your company? So they're more interested in that kind of a content versus just listing of jobs. That's why job content matters. You need to have a strong mix to be able to promote your brand, and candidates can envision themselves working for you. Now let's take a little bit of a deeper dive into our social recruiting funnel. So most companies, they jump straight to the bottom of the funnel and they just start posting jobs. Why? Probably because it's the easiest thing to do. Is it wrong? No, but you also need a whole holistic view because there's a lot of passive talent out there and you want to try to get them to also be active candidates too. And a lot of candidates, even active ones, aren't really necessarily ready to apply. They're sometimes just starting their active journey search and trying to look at different companies. So you need to have a really holistic view on your social recruiting funnel. So the first step is capturing their attention on, you know, Facebook, Instagram, even your LinkedIn, posting things. You want to post the content that's interesting, that's engaging, that people who are maybe not looking for a job but are still consuming that content online, that it'll apply to them. And then also over time, some of these passive job seekers, they're going to start becoming more interested and they're going to start wondering what opportunities do you have? And they're going to start paying attention a little bit more to your job postings. And they're going to hopefully move into that active job seeker funnel. And then at that point, when you do get active job seekers, you want to make sure you have a clear path for them to be able to apply to your jobs. You also want to be able to try to sell your jobs to them. Again, why is your company the one that they want to work for over another company? So trying to encourage them in any way to hit that apply button, but also making it easy for them to hit that apply button. Not making a long, you know, jumping through hoops. Some people post on Facebook or on LinkedIn and they have them apply through a third party versus directing them strictly to your job site, your career site to apply. So making it easy for them to apply. The key thing to remember is that very few people that are on social media are looking to immediately apply. It's about building that holistic awareness and trust so that candidates are, when they're ready to make a move, they think of your company first. So there are more channels than ever available now to recruiters for social media. You have LinkedIn, which has job postings too. So it's actually a social media as well as an active job board to post jobs to. You have Meta with Facebook and Instagram, TikTok, X, which was formerly Twitter, Snapchat, YouTube. You have podcasts like our Take the Stage. You have company review sites like Glassdoor. And then you also have email and texting recruiting channels. The challenge, as you can see, isn't finding a channel to be able to advertise on. The challenge is choosing the right channel for your audience and using that strategically. Different candidates look at different places. For example, a CDL driver is probably not going to be spending much time on LinkedIn. They might be more likely to be on YouTube or listening to a podcast. Just like an accountant, they're probably not going to be on Snapchat. They're more likely to look at LinkedIn and see your feed through there and be engaged in that social channel. So the goal isn't just to be everywhere because there are so many sites. The goal is to be visible where your candidates are. So again, knowing where your ICP, what your ICP is for your candidates and knowing what channels that they are going to be on and spending time. So there's two ways that you can get your content in front of candidates on social media, and that's either through organic reach or through paid reach. Organic reach comes from the audience that you have already built. So those would be your followers that are already connected to following your Facebook page or your LinkedIn page. It also could even be groups that you're involved in. So there are several groups within LinkedIn or Facebook, and you can post on there information about your company that is or you're organically reaching people on those pages. And then your paid reach allows you to expand beyond that audience and to get your content in front of candidates and job seekers that might not necessarily know about your company. So you can pay to put your information in front of them based on location, even their interest, demographics. On LinkedIn, you can even target them by their job title. So you can show ads just to people who are, senior managers or engineers. So you're not going to a whole wide blanket of an audience. Both of these have value. Organic helps you build your relationships with already those people who know about your company and want to follow you, where paid will help you increase your visibility for people who might not necessarily know about your company and that you even have those job opportunities. So most companies, the best strategy is to use a combination of both. And even when you're doing paid, I tend to recommend even doing a campaign that is directing people to apply to the job, but also doing one that is directing people to follow your page because not everybody on social media, as we said, is ready to apply. So even having them just be a follower of your page, once they want to apply and they're now finally ready to take that next step, you've engaged with them over time. So next is about the content that you're putting on your social media. It shouldn't all be about job postings. Eventually, if you did that and you infiltrated it all with job postings, candidates are going to stop paying attention. Also, you might turn some people away because they might be thinking, is there a lot of turnover there? Are they always hiring? Is that always the same position? Why can't they find somebody for that job? So you don't want to always inundate your social media with just job postings itself. You need to put up there some engaging content, things about what is your culture like. It could even be career advice, highlights of maybe an employee recognition that you had, or maybe an employee that has been there for a long time and celebrating their success. Something that is going to even encourage those passive candidates to look at your company. So you want to have different types of content on there. With that, also, you want to have different ways you're showcasing it, either through a video or a graphic, links to different articles. Because not everybody's ready to watch a video. They might be scrolling their phone in the middle of a public situation and they're not going to watch that video. But if you had an ad up there, they might see that. So having different ways that you're showing that content and different varieties is always best. So having a mix to keep that audience engaged.
All right. And the fourth and last pillar we will be discussing, but certainly not the least important, is employer or employment branding. So really focusing on building that trust. Um, One of the big stats we like to use here at Haley Marketing is 80%, 88% of people trust an online review as much as they trust the advice from a friend or a family, which is kind of just like a great way to explain the value and the importance of employer branding. One of the first things to do or to focus on when you're thinking about this is to define your EVP, which stands for Employee Value Proposition. Essentially, it's the unique benefits or perks that someone gets for working for you. A lot of those intangibles that we talked about earlier about candidates wanting, that kind of fits in here. So your company culture, career opportunities, is your company a certified B corporation, flexible PTO, provided childcare, especially now that we're into the summer months and school is out. That's a huge help. Stipends for physical or mental health memberships. You can really the opportunities for this is limitless, and this is where you can kind of get creative on how you want to stand out from your competitors. And when you are telling your story, obviously you need to talk about who you are and what you do, but that's not really the most compelling part. The most compelling part is talking about how your company can help the viewer and how you can fix their issues. In this case, how you can take someone who needs a job or wants to find a new job and help them get that and be happier in their overall life. In recruitment marketing, your company is not the main character in the story. The candidate is, and your company is there to guide them, to help them succeed. Maximizing your visibility online and offline. Obviously, everyone knows that online visibility is absolutely critical. It has been for years, but more and more people and trends are showing that, people are trying to decrease their screen time and their social media usage. I mean, everyone and just myself included, every week you get that notification from your phone that says, 4 hours of screen time on average per day. And then you think, man, I gotta get off my phone and go outside. So you can't solely be online. You have to be online too and really maximize your reach and be where people are looking and where they're going. And finally, control your reputation. So being proactive. Not that this is always easy, but I do think that this is one step that any company, no matter who you are or what you do, can implement today, is just ask for reviews when you engage with people. Someone came off and finished an assignment, make sure to ask them to leave a review. You can get creative with this as well. And if you're struggling, you can give a $5 gift card to a coffee shop for everyone who leaves a review or other things like that. Really bolstering those numbers is important, because just similar to when you're purchasing something online, you might see it. Next thing you do is go to look at the reviews, and if chances are, if the stars are, sub average, that's pretty much it. You're not going to go ahead and continue purchasing that or thinking about purchasing that. So controlling your reputation is super important. And make sure that you're responding to your reviews, the good and the bad. Um, y- People like to see companies who engage online. And when there are bad reviews, that's a great opportunity to show people that you're willing to acknowledge when you were in the wrong or didn't necessarily do something the best and that you're willing to fix it. Sometimes that example, that opportunity can be more compelling and a better, opportunity than a normal just 5-star review that doesn't say anything. Um, Here we have, just a lot of different examples of what employment branding looks like. Um, this is where you can kind of be a little bit more creative. Um, you really do need to think about and look for where your competitors are advertising, but also where they're not. Think about the top right example, advertising at a baseball game. If you're the only staffing company with an ad there, you're reaching thousands of people at once and no one else is, which is a huge advantage. So again, know where your ideal candidates are spending their time, both online and offline. Are they commuting? Are they generally going to be using Facebook versus another social media platform? Really get into the mind of those candidates that you're trying to target. And obviously, there are so many places to leave reviews: Google reviews, Facebook reviews, Indeed, and Glassdoor. At the end of the day, they're all very important. They all matter. If two sources have, let's say on Google, you have a 4.5-star review, but on Facebook you have a 2-star review, overall it's a little weird and it leads to distrust and skepticism. So try to have that consistent reputation across um, all sites and review platforms. And this kind of dips into social recruiting, but make sure you are active on everything. Like I said, people want to see companies engage. If they're looking at your company as a potential employer and then they stumble across your Facebook page and they see that you haven't been active in since 2022, it's going to look a little weird, and they might be a little less enthusiastic about applying for your job. So there we have all four of the pillars of recruitment marketing. Appreciate everyone tuning in. David, you want to jump back in?
Yeah, sorry guys, thought I didn't realize that was the last one. I thought there was a wrap it up to pull together all four pillars again, but my mistake, not yours. So thank you very much. Really appreciated the overview of the four pillars of recruitment marketing. There were a couple of questions in the Q&A and in the chat, so I tried to keep up with those as they were coming in. But if there are additional questions, please feel free to reach out. Just to kind of recap, I mean, I really love what you covered. So often we think of recruitment marketing as nothing more than the job advertising. Staffing companies sometimes do that, and I know lots of other small businesses do that. I have friends that run small businesses, and when they think they need to hire, all they do is run an ad on Indeed, and they get frustrated if they don't get what they want. But Katie, you hit on it. Bradley, you hit on it. Only 30% of the people you're going after are looking at the job ads. And if you're going to fill your clients' job orders in a market that's starting to warm back up or where quality talent is scarce, you need to get the right candidates, but not just get the right candidates, you need to get them faster than everybody else. And that's why that passive candidate recruiting, and that's why these pillars are so important, is are you doing the things to maximize conversions on your website? Are you doing the things to control your employment brand? Because if you're not proactively controlling what people see, whatever others say about you in those reviews, that's your employment brand. You're stuck with it. And then on the social media, you did a nice job covering. There's just so many ways, and I got a little overwhelming when you showed the 742 different social channels these days, and we didn't even cover all of them because there wasn't enough room on the screen. But there are so many different ways to communicate with potential candidates. And you said it, I want to reiterate it. Don't try to be everywhere, but be where your candidates are most likely to show up. And one thing I'll add to what you shared is also think about their intent. If they're on Instagram, why are they there? If they're on TikTok, why are they there? So if I hit them with something that's so far afield from their intent, it's not going to work. But if I hit them something that's related to the intent, like I'm taking a break, I'm looking for entertainment, yeah, job stuff can be interesting. Job stuff can be stories people want to read up. Job stuff is very emotional. Finding a job is emotional. The people you place, there's great stories you have of those candidates. You can do so much with that on social media that builds your brand and does the social recruiting. So Bradley, Katie, thank you so much for sharing your expertise for the last hour. We will wrap it up. We do not yet have our Q3 lunch with Haley schedule on our website. It's coming soon, but we do have our last Q2 product demo. So on Tuesday, the 23rd of June, we're going to be showing off not just our career portal software, which had a recent, fairly significant upgrade, but also some of the parts that go into our speed layer to helping to do automation of the talent management process. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that job spend management. Bradley, you covered a lot of stuff that without actually seeing what it's all about, it's kind of hard to understand everything you can do to help companies get more value out of all that money that you spend with the job boards where you'd like to spend less. So we'll show you some ideas on how you can do that. From all of us at Haley Marketing, a huge thank you for attending today. And again, to Bradley and Katie, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom on today's Lunch with Haley webinar. We'll see y'all again in a couple of weeks.
Everyone.
Thanks, David. Bye, everyone.